Welcome to These Aren't the Nerds You're Looking For podcast. This is Kevin Horde.
Lorenzo Fon here.
And we are here today to discuss Season 2, Episode 16 of The Clone Wars. That is the first story chronologically in this whole kind of mess of stories that Dave Filoni told about The Clone Wars. It is titled Cat and Mouse. And like I said, it is actually was released Season 2, Episode 16. So, in this episode, basic breakdown of what happens is that Anakin is supposed to be doing one thing, doesn't really listen to Obi-Wan too well. Obi-Wan comes in to kind of save his tail. Anakin gets this super secret stealth ship that instead of then actually doing what he is supposed to do, again, decides to just kind of go out on his own, do what he feels like, and, in classic Clone Wars Anakin fashion, he, saves the day, I guess. That's your basic breakdown. We're gonna take some time and just kind of get a little bit more into things that we saw watching the episode. Not necessarily a second-by-second breakdown of every single thing that happened. We figure if you want that, you can just go ahead and watch the episode. So, Lorenzo?
Yeah, so my first question to you, just in terms of watching this first chronologically, now have you watched, when you originally watched the show, did you just watch in air order, or did you jump back and then watch in chronological?
That's a good question. I'll tell you what, when I first watched the show, I actually just assumed that it was in chronological order.
Mm-hmm.
And it was probably partway through Season 1 that I figured out that wasn't the case. And then I was kind of crabby with it for a while, but, what can you do? At the time, it was what we had to watch. So getting over that and, just enjoying each episode as they came out. Because I don't even know that I had cable service or anything at the time. I think I was just, they were released on StarWars.com like the week after they aired on TV. So... after the first episode came out, like the next week, you'd be able to watch the first episode online. And Dave Filoni actually did like these little short 3 to 6 minute snippets about each episode that were released at the same time, which was pretty
Were those
cool.
like behind the scenes or just like extra stuff for it?
A little of both, if I recall.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time, man.
Yeah, well, because like my main question is, because like I watched them in release order, and I didn't even watch the show until after it had ended, and
really?
Like, the whole Netflix thing had been released, so like I binged it all on Netflix, but I just went in order
right
of release, just for sanity's sake, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in this watching, starting with this episode, my question to you is like, watching chronologically, you have to assume so much because they aren't proper introductions to any of these characters, really.
Right. Actually, one of the things that I've got here in my notes is just a list of all of the clones that we're meeting along the way. And so it's either by number, name, and then, what episode they were on, and type of rank, if they have a specific type of rank. But in this first episode, we meet... there's tons and tons and tons of clones, right? It's called the Clone Wars, so they're all over the place. But there's only actually one that's named. His name's Spark. He's CT-1284, and it's just a rookie that's coming up onto this super stealth secret ship that Anakin's supposed to be piloting. So at that point, I'm thinking, okay, well, what happened to the guy that he's replacing? Like, where did he go? What happened before this? How'd they get themselves into this situation? And to me, I really felt like that is what drew me to the Clone Wars to begin with, because way back in the day when I was a kid, we had episode 4, 5, and 6, or A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, or Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi, whatever you want to call it. That's all we had. And, we'd watch it over and over and over and over and over again on VHS, be it if you got your copies from wherever, garage sale, taped off a TV. I think McDonald's had them at one point in time, maybe.
Yeah.
So when the prequels came out, it was like, cool, this is more Star Wars stuff. And then Dave Filoni was announced to be doing the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars is one of those like mystic things that you'd heard about but you'd never seen. So being able to go back and kind of see these things unfold, it's like it was all the stuff that I wanted when I was a kid, because you want to know more. Like they're talking about things that happen off screen that you didn't know about. It's just this established history of whatever's already happened, and that's where the Clone Wars is. And then boom, immediately, if you're watching chronologically, this first episode does exactly the same thing, and it just to me opens up this bigger rabbit hole to go down to find out all of those stories as well.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to start with that question before we even get into the episode proper, just in terms of the background, because there are a few interesting things where Anakin already has the scar on his eye. So now, too, discussing the post-Disney purchase, is there an in-canon explanation for it?
Right.
Because in the previous story, I believe, is he and Ventress get in a fight.
Right.
And that's where it comes from.
Yeah, that was the Clone Wars shorts by
Jendi
Tarkovsky.
Yeah. So that's my question, because even then, well, those shorts came out just before episode 3, correct? On Cartoon Network?
Yes, like sometime around release time of episode 3. So here's what I think happened. I think that Dave Filoni kind of did a pick and choose what he wanted out of that was like, hey, this is cool, that's garbage, the hell with that, whatever, and just kind of Calypso cut it up into whatever he wanted. And if he wanted to use something from it, cool. If he didn't, then all right, see you later. I mean, that's where Ventress came from, right? Or did she come from the comics originally? Probably the comics.
Yeah,
I'm
not
really
really sure.
I would have to look into that.
Yeah.
That's what I feel that Disney is doing with the old EU. So it's kind of like, the Clone Wars shorts are the old animated EU.
Yeah.
I'd be interested.
Because those are thrown out, yeah.
Right. I would be
just Filoni stuff, yeah.
I would be interested to see if Dave Filoni has taken anything from like the old Droids cartoon or the old Ewoks cartoon. I would doubt it.
Yeah, well, yeah, because essentially what's been left of the canon in terms of visual medium, we're just going straight from Attack of the Clones to this. So
correct. Right. So essentially the last thing that you would have seen was Padme and Anakin's wedding.
Yes, yeah. And then you cut to this.
And then you cut.
Anakin has a scar.
Right. Anakin's got a scar on his face. He's now a marionette. And middle of battle. So
like he's running a troop of clones. Like we're just.
He's already a general.
Yeah. Well, because then I think it's established later, right, that basically if you're a Jedi, you're automatic. Like if you're a certain rank in Jedi, you're just automatically general over all the clones, right?
Correct. I think a Jedi Knight well, okay. Well, actually, we will get to that in 2 episodes from now. So
okay. So we're just going to leave that
episode 3
floating.
of We're Not the Nerds You're Looking For. We'll be covering the first quarter or third of the Clone Wars animated movie. That will be addressed. You'll get an answer to that.
Okay. So we'll just leave that open. We'll get back to that. But even then, you're kind of going, if you're watching chronologically, you have to start with a bunch of assumptions leading into this. In addition, that you aren't being introduced properly to these characters. Like you're
right.
Filoni, to some sense, is assuming you know who these people are before they just appear on screen.
Right.
So that part I just found very interesting.
Right.
Watching in this order now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
I have never watched all of the animated Clone Wars stuff in chronological order, so this is a first for me. I'm wondering if anybody out there has. I would imagine so, because if not, I don't know why there would be so many lists of episodes chronologically online. And I think it's going to be an interesting experience. So, kind of moving forward, getting back to this episode, Cat and Mouse. Again, season 2, episode 16. Original air date was March 26th of 2010 in the U.S. to just over 2 million people. That seems like a lot to me. Like, I don't know. I don't follow ratings, so maybe it's not. But
it's a good number. I think that's a pretty good number.
That's pretty good for something that was on Cartoon Network.
Cartoon Network, yeah.
Anyway,
especially even back in 2010, you know, it wasn't as fragmented. If we're going to get into the business of it, you know,
right?
It's even harder now because you have Netflix, Hulu. You're watching on apps. You're watching a few days later. You know, it's very fragmented now. But back then, you didn't really have those options. Like you said, they went up on StarWars.com later, right? But a week later. So you know that those numbers wouldn't account for that. I don't believe. But yeah, 2 million is pretty good for Cartoon Network, you know. Especially considering that we're in terms of air date, yeah, we're deep into season 2. We're a little bit past midway, yeah.
That's funny because seeing as this is quote unquote episode 1,
yeah,
I didn't even think of that. But, I'm just thinking, oh look, like, you know, first episode is March 26th, which
is definitely not. We are way past it. Yeah.
So
like the show has been hitting its stride at that point. So 2 million it's pretty good once you're that deep in, because what will happen is like season premiere, you'll get a lot of interest, and then people have lives, and then they kind of forget to keep watching. You know,
right?
They'll wait for the DVD, Blu-ray.
Yeah,
binge it then.
And it's not like this is even, you know, like after a mid-season break or anything like that. It's just kind of solid thrown in the middle.
Oh, completely, yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Because I'll have to check. I think there was 22 episodes of season 1, season 2, season 3. Does that sound right? 22 episodes.
That sounds pretty correct.
Probably season 4, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely the only oddball is going to be the Netflix season 6, correct?
Correct, season 6, which is actually like the what is that? The Lost Missions, and I think it's just like 6 of them. But other than that, I think it's pretty standard. It's like
22 is about your standard number, yeah.
Because I know that Cat and Mouse, if you buy like the complete season on DVD, it's disc 3, the last episode on that disc. So there's another, you know. So I guess that would be like 6 per disc. My math is awesome. It's probably like 5, 6, and 6, or 5, 5, and 6, something like that. 5, 6, 6, 5. I don't know. I'm just talking right now.
Moving on back to another question I had. I don't know if you know the answer to this. So they make this big deal about the secrecy of the cloaking technology.
Yes.
But then, as the episode goes on, Anakin kind of figures out that Trench, the villain of this episode, had prior experience to it. Right?
Right.
Now, my question is, so again, because I'm kind of just jumping into this one, and my brain is kind of having a mild disconnect from everything else.
Right.
Have we seen
cloaking?
A lot of cloaking? Yeah.
No, actually, I don't think we've seen any.
Yeah, like episode 1, 2, we don't get any cloaking, right?
Correct.
We get a lot of like hiding.
No, wait. Darth Maul's ship, right? I know that in canon it has a cloaking device, but I'm going to say that we do not.
Did that happen? Yeah, in episode 1.
I'm going to say that we do not actually see it. I think in the novelization it talks about the ship being cloaked when it lands on Tatooine. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to go ahead and say that we don't actually see that.
Yeah, because like I'm also trying to just make sure my memory isn't confusing it with because Padme ships were very reflective.
Mm-hmm. That's like the opposite of
it's
cloaking.
completely, yeah. But then, like, when it's in space too, that was always an interesting thing to me. Is like, what is it reflecting in space? You know. But as soon as
R2D2.
I guess. But then if it's reflecting the voidness of space, how is anybody seeing it? You know, like,
Because they have headlights.
does that make sense? I guess.
I
It's
mean,
just shining
these
back.
starships do have headlights. The Millennium Falcon has headlights.
To bounce at what? Like,
Whatever it needs to.
okay. I'm
Asteroids
just
or
checking.
space
Yeah.
slugs or...
So that's what I'm saying. Because, like, yeah, in the later ones, we just see, like, Falcon hiding in the asteroid, you know, or against one of the Star Destroyers.
Right.
But, yeah, we've never actually seen one, like, full-blown.
Yeah, I don't think there's... I don't think we've seen anything full-blown cloaked up to this point.
Do we later anyways? Now I'm thinking past it.
No. I don't think you ever do.
In any of the live-action movies? No.
No, I mean... There's the line in Empire, no ship this small is a cloaking device,
Yeah.
which Anakin actually says in this episode, except for he says no ship this small usually has a cloaking device.
Yeah.
So it's kind of talked about, but it's not something you ever see.
Mm-hmm.
Probably for good reason as well.
Technological special effect reasons, or
No, I was actually thinking like reasons
budget reasons.
No, reasons that make sense inside Star Wars, man. I'll get to that. I guess I'll get to that later.
Yeah,
When we get to our kind of a overall opinion of what's going on in these episodes, you know. So speaking of Trench, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's said that he has fought other cloaked ships before, so it makes it sound like it's semi-commonplace.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm...
Which is
like,
weird.
Because Anakin, when he first sees it, is surprised by it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he doesn't seem shocked that it exists, but he's just like, how did we get one? Right?
Right. Like,
He's
ooh,
kind
this
of-
is cool. I built my own droid when I was 9, but cloaking technology is so foreign to me, even though this guy that I'm fighting has done it all the time.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out, too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the commonplace of it, or in universe, how difficult it is to do.
Right.
Right?
I guess it would kind of depend on when it's brought up, because at some points it seems like, you know,
Yeah.
it happens, and at other times it's like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
You know. So, I thought one thing that I found amusing about this Trench character is that there's Wolf Yularen, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the commanding officers with Anakin, and so he's all like freaking out and like, oh my god, we gotta like run away because that's what you do in the military and whatnot. And then he starts doing research because he looks at the ship that that Trench is on, which is called the
Invincible?
Invincible. Yes, it is the Invincible.
Yep.
And it is also the exact same ship as the Invisible Hand, which is General Grievous's ship in episode 3. So, and there's like even some shot for shots that are like, hey, look, they're kind of recreating what we have seen
In episode
3.
3.
What we
events.
will see in the future of
Yeah.
however that works.
So Grievous just eventually, at some point in the future, takes over the Invincible and...
No, it's they're separate ships, but it's the...
Wait?
Yeah, it'd be like if there was just another random YT 1300.
Okay, yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So they're just two of the exact, it's two the same ship.
They're two Ford Tauruses that they both happen to drive, essentially.
Correct.
Yes, okay.
Very correct.
Because at this point, too, we're kind of assuming because of manufacturing, that's why like they've mass-produced all the various battleships and Star Destroyers and stuff. They're just continually pumping them out out and then just giving them separate ship names. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm guessing Star Destroyer was probably a better analogy than Ford Taurus. But essentially they're just two Star Destroyers. Technically, it's a Providence class dreadnought variant, but there you go. And why you would have a variant of that specific class dreadnought for two separate generals, I don't know. Yeah. But whatever. Anyway, so this dreadnought's coming at him. The Invincible's like bearing down on him, blah, blah, blah. And there's a very specific, large symbol essentially painted to the side that looks like a spider head with some mandibles. So Yularen's like, oh my god, like this totally reminds me of something that I saw way in the past, and does all this research. And all this research, he pushes like 3 buttons on a computer, and he's all worried and freaked out.
I want to ask you about your opinion of Yularen, because I have one note on Yularen, and it's just that he's annoyingly panicky as a viewer.
I would describe him as an obnoxious dolt.
Yeah.
Like, he's
like, I don't understand what he's doing there if he's that panicky.
I feel like if he was on Sesame Street, he would be Elmo, like throwing his hands up, or Grover, more likely, like throwing his hands up and like running around, like just like you said, panicking all the time. So,
because everybody else is really chill, especially in the scenes that are very obviously a Hunt for Red October reference,
right?
Where it's straight up the same like submarine
ping, ping, yeah, which is actually pretty cool. I enjoyed that a lot.
It's a cool reference for sure, but everybody else is chill, and fucking Yularen is losing his damn mind, not helping anything.
No, like I said earlier, his entire strategy was like, oh shit, somebody's shooting at us, let's run away. He literally suggest that they run and hide behind the moon.
Yeah.
And then there's...
My question is, how did he get promoted to the point of even like being sent out for actual battle? Like,
because he was the guy in the white suit in Moff Tarkin's little table tea party in episode 4.
I guess
I can't call him by episode since we're doing things episode by episode.
Yeah.
So I'll call it A New Hope. In A New Hope. He's the guy in the white suit with the big old bushy mustache.
Just starting with this, that was like the weird... It was just a weird character point that I get that from a storytelling perspective, it was supposed to kind of like bump up tensions.
Right.
But like there was already... It was already well done with the submarine scenes. You know, red light, all that stuff. Having a dude freak out that way. It kind of reminded me of the scene in Alien, too. When they're looking at the radar and the 2 dots are converging. And it's that one lady who's just freaking out. Just yelling. Who is not helping shit. All she's doing is like, it's right behind you. It's right behind you. But she's not getting more specific than that. It's not, So it's just one of those like character tropes that has always annoyed me. It's not this one specifically. It's just other writers have done it even in great movies like Alien,
Right.
But seeing it here was interesting, but go ahead. I don't have a point to that. It was just like a definite annoyance to me.
Right.
In a quick 22-minute episode that so much time was spent around this character just
being a spaz.
Yeah. Just being a complete spaz.
All right, so I totally found the note that I was looking for. So when all this is going down, there's a trooper like just chilling at this computer, and he's just like doing my trooper job, and like pulls up all this information. And it's like 3 or 4 screens essentially of all this random Arbesh text.
Arbesh, yeah.
And so I'm learning to read Arbesh along the way so that we can fill you guys in on what's going on that nobody probably really cares about because it's an Arbesh. But this trooper, like, boom, instantly identifies what the ship is, who the commander is, what's going on. And it says, the Dreadnought is invincible, is believed to be under the command of Commander Trench. Like, that is the first thing that pops up when it says enemy ship profile. And then, like, 5 minutes later, Yulari's, like, going crazy, and he's like, ooh, I've seen the spider thing before, and that's when he starts freaking out. But it's like, the trooper, like, already did this shit. Like, Yulari, you're behind the times, everybody's updated, everybody knows what's going on. And what I wrote was that Yulari basically, like, Googles this spider thing, and then this clone trooper just, hops on Wikipedia and gets it done in, like, 3 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
It is funny that, because when Yulari is doing all this research, Admiral Trench pops up. It's a picture of him. It says search result, and then it says Admiral Taranch. So whoever was doing, I guess, the coding for this Arbesh sequence just completely spelled his name wrong.
Now, do you find it weird that there's a LinkedIn for enemy troopers and generals, and like, where is this information being populated from? Who is filling out these records? Is this
really dedicated troopers to,
like, is this part of the same record keeping that's in the Jedi temples when, like, Obi-Wan is like, there should be a planet there?
I guess not, because it is kind of like the Jedi are using a card catalog system and everybody else is on the internet. And so maybe this trooper's like, hey, fuck this guy. Like, I'm not doing all this paper research. Like, I'll just plug in my iPhone here. We're just going to do a little research and...
Yeah, hit Control F and then...
Right,
like,
Control F, Trench. And maybe, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's why it took Yulari so long, because he can't spell the dude's fucking name right.
Yeah.
So... It is interesting, though, on that screen. Sorry to just cut back to this real quick. On that screen, the enemy ship profile of the Invincible, there's 3 squares down at the bottom, and I couldn't read all of it, but in the first fucking square, it says in 1007 BBY on the first line. So, and it's cool that BBY is before Battle of Yavin, right?
Yeah.
That's totally cool that we can use the Battle of Yavin as a reference point, but
that calendar won't exist yet for...
Right, exactly. The calendar would not exist up until after the Battle of Yavin.
Yeah.
I mean...
Which I know Pablo Hidalgo has talked about, because they've run into those issues too for, like, the various visual dictionaries, which are all canon.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are certain paragraphs in there that he has to write, like, forewords to, because they use that calendar system,
right,
of BBY and ABY after Battle of Yavin.
Right.
And I know he's had to explain where he's like, look, this isn't the in-canon dating system. It's just what we are using.
Right.
But it is funny that you noted that it shows up on screen.
It totally does. Like... So a B kind of looks like, I don't know, like if you took some brackets and laid them on their side and put a dot in the middle, and it's 2 of those, and then very clearly a Y. So, it might not be exactly 1007, but it definitely says in some number BBY.
BBY.
And then it goes on to describe, it looks like a battle of Thorin, and then it says Trench, so I don't know why it would be 1,000 years ago, and then it's talking about the ship Dreadnought and Brotherhood of Dark something, more battleships. So it's just, I don't know. I enjoy that. I think it's great. I think that all this background stuff, Dave Filoni or somebody else put some time and some effort into thinking this stuff up. Not that it all makes sense, but it's there.
Now, how do you feel about looking at it from the outside again instead of just in the episode? Because sometimes there are those mistakes that happen that then have to be canonized because they've made it through.
Right.
Now, how do you feel about... Because, like, there have been comics, too, where Aurebesh is kind of like your galactic basic. That's, they aren't speaking English because England doesn't exist, so they call it galactic basic.
Right.
And then Aurebesh is the written alphabet that goes along with that.
Right.
But there are what we would call our alphabet, the Arabic letters, A, B, C, D,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Right, there's an A wing.
Yeah.
It's not an R wing.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not a Besh wing. It's a B wing. It's
So
an X wing because it looks like the Aramaic
the letter
X.
X. Yeah. So then what I'm getting at, like, as more people have hands on this universe with the expanded universe, books, all that stuff, you know, getting their say in, there have been like mistakes where comics have put in like a filler of what like a sign says, but they accidentally wrote it in just normal Arabic English letters.
Right.
Right.
Well, that's what the special edition's for.
Yeah. Going back and just fixing all that. So
you know that was one of the changes in like the 90. It was either in the 97 special edition or like the DVD edition,
where they fixed the Arabic for some of it, right?
Yeah. So, like when Obi-Wan is deactivating the tractor beam,
Yeah.
it says power
Yeah.
in the 77 version, but it's an Arabic in I know at
all
least
the-
the DVD version, but I
Yeah.
feel like it's the
It was one of the
special
first things
edition.
fixed.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, like, so that's what I'm saying in terms of now that there are these other mistakes making their way through, like, how, just on a fan level, like, how pedantic are you getting about paying attention to some of those?
I would say I'm getting pretty pedantic if I'm realizing that a guy's name is spelled wrong in an alien language.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can't argue that they are minute points of detail. But
no, because I definitely like have read some of the Star Wars comics that are post Disney, and I recognize, I'm like, oh, they just forgot to change that to Arabic, and it's like clearly been written in an Arabic style, but it still definitely says something in English. You know, but what's funny to me is apparently like that's High Galactic now. You know.
Oh, so that's the difference between like Galactic Basic and High Galactic?
Yeah, like High Galactic is basically Arabic letters that you and I would be able to read no problem without a translation from Arabic, you know. But I find it funny that they have to kind of go back and still make those corrections after the fact, you know.
Right.
So
So is
so
this stuff
stemming
that
from
happened
this, yeah.
pre-Disney or post-Disney?
Post Disney, it's with the
Really?
new comics from just like last year or the year before. Yeah.
Somebody got fired.
Yeah, somebody. Yeah.
For sure.
But that was always interesting to me. So, and it's interesting seeing it happen. You know, even like with Filoni, what is now the first of the remaining EU, right? So, yeah.
So what's your thought on this this clone ship in general? Not clone ship, cloak ship. The clones are on the cloak ship.
I had another question about the cloak ship actually. Now
Sure.
that you bring that up, why does the ship need to be uncloaked to fire missiles? Because that's a big plot point. I mean,
My guess, and I didn't have a hang up on that. My thought process or my guess is that whatever process is used to cloak the ship would be damaged should you fire torpedoes through said invisible shield screen,
okay.
and it would break it.
I mean, yeah, that was just like definitely one of the little points that kind of, even in this crazy world of Star Wars, it was the one like plot contrivance that was definitely just written as that. Like, hey, we need to try and figure out that or show that this isn't like an all powerful
Right.
thing for them to sneak by. So like, oh, they have to turn it off when they fire a missile. Like, okay. That was just a kind of a weird another little criticism I had from just a storytelling point.
Right. From a functioning point, I have another question for you. So, these large star cruisers that the Jedi fly around that look like Star Destroyers, but they aren't.
Yeah.
What
Not
are they?
yet. Yeah.
What'd you say?
Not yet. Or they will like
Right, they will be.
evolve, yeah.
So the docking bay is like in the middle of the top of the fucking ship, right?
Yeah.
Like you fly down and these big ass doors that are like a quarter mile long like open up because obviously that would work all the time. I mean, my garage door is like 12 feet wide and has problems 3 times a year.
Yeah.
But if you pay attention, like, so Anakin like comes in and they open this thing up and then he like flies in and lands and they close the doors above him, presumably, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's just like walking around on this docking bay. But when he takes off later, you can tell that there are vertical shields on either side.
Mm-hmm.
Like the blue shields that are on like the Death Star and shit to like keep all those people from being sucked out into space. Mm-hmm. So how do the fucking shields work on this thing? Like, are they vertical? Is it like a blue wall? And do they have like a secondary one that protects like the canopy, like above? Or
that's always been a question of mine too. Like, what is
it
producing
just
that?
Right? Is it just somebody was like, oh, this would be like way cool if we just like open the top and you can just like drop down in, like land in the middle of the ship? And then later somebody's like, oh, we need some shields like to make sure that this shit doesn't like fall out.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, oh, we'll just put them like up and down because that's totally cool. It's like a door. But then
the shields are interesting. I mean, the shields are hard to pick apart because later it's in Revenge of the Sith at the beginning, right? When they're flying into one of the ships and then the
invisible hand.
They shoot the
Obi-Wan's like, oh, have you noticed the shields are still up? Anakin's like, yeah, I got it, bro. And does a little barrel roll and shoots him out.
And then there's like the secondary like shield door, like the actual metal shield door that shuts down. Yeah.
Right.
So then, number one, why are those shields in such an obvious place to shoot down? Like,
right.
Yeah, and
like
then
turn off alarm system here with a big fucking flashing arrow.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the code written on a Post-it note right underneath, right? Like, but yeah. So then, so it brings back to your question. Well, because like, do those have an edge? Is there an end to it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like what's the limit on that? Or is it like the sensor in your garage that's just going between the two?
I think it's totally like the blue film. Like you walk through it, and if you're dumb enough to like walk through the blue thing, then you're out in space and you do whatever happens to you in Star Wars when you're out in space without life protecting equipment on, which is, I think, just kind of float there for a while, and then maybe you can live for a little bit of time. That seems to be the way that things work now.
A minute. No, you get about 1 actual minute of...
And then it's bad for you?
Yeah, because the real science, based on what I have read as a non-scientist...
It is real science time here.
Real science
These
time.
aren't the nerds you're looking for.
Because this has been a criticism of... I don't want to open this can of worms, but Last Jedi. You know, so spoilers for Last Jedi.
Yeah, it hasn't been just The Last Jedi. I mean, it was also in Guardians of the Galaxy. It's been in
Sunshine
in a lot
was the one that brought it up.
Newer.
Yeah. Sunshine in 2007 was kind of the big one to bring it up because Chris Evans' character, they're...
You mean Captain America, right?
Yeah, Captain America.
Okay, I follow
not
you.
The BBC radio host.
That's Captain America, who is also in other movies where he doesn't actually play Captain America.
Yeah, exactly.
He's still Captain America.
Captain America, where he was pre-Captain America.
Okay.
So there are 2 spaceships that have broken apart. So there are like 3 characters on one side, and the rest are on the main ship, right?
Right.
So Chris Evans' idea is to open the capsule, let the depressurization shoot them across the, I don't know, like 100 yards.
Right.
Through open space and try and just aim for the door on the other side.
So, what's he depressurizing? I know we're way off topic, but I'm kind of intrigued. Like, is he like, all right, bros, we're going to stand in front of the window. You're going to throw a chair, and we're going to, like, dive toward the window. And when it breaks, we're just going to, like, zoom that way.
And just get zoomed out. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly his plan. So
sweet.
The only protection he gets is that they find some, like, foil blankets. That's the only thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, again, this is the movie Sunshine by Danny Boyle and written by Alex Garland. But
Okay.
apparently they checked into all of this, and then I checked into it afterwards. So they shoot across, and I think at most, so one person doesn't make it. They get ejected off and hit and go off in a bad angle. Chris Evans and one other character make it in, and at most, like, Chris Evans has minor frostbite on his hand.
Right.
Right. So, based on my understanding, there are a few things here. You can survive space for about 1 minute. You don't freeze instantly. The thought is the stereotype that is believed amongst many of us is that you would just freeze instantly.
Yeah. And when I was a kid, I remember, I'm pretty sure that at that time, everyone knew that if you like open the door on a spaceship, you just like blow up or implode or something.
Yeah. Basically, like what happens in like Total Recall, right? Like Total Recall, like when they lose oxygen, you know, their eyes start bulging out, stuff like that, right?
Right.
So there are a few things at play here. Heat needs somewhere to dissipate to, right? On Earth, that's into the air. There's air molecules that are being warmed up by your own body heat.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in the vacuum of space, there's just nowhere for that to go.
Mm.
So you are chilling for about a minute. Now,
Literally chilling.
yeah, you're just hanging out.
Just chilling.
So that's why you don't freeze instantly, because there's nowhere for that heat to dissipate to. Your main issue is getting more oxygen. Now, here's where I get confused. So the next bit, somebody can correct me on after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Your lungs are going to have an issue with the lack of pressure.
Right. I thought that was the issue with when you blow up and your eyes explode and blood squirts out of your anus and everything else.
Yeah. But again, you're in a vacuum, so it's not that your pressure is being completely equally pulled in every direction. Again, there's just your cells are still holding together, and it's just another issue of that there's just nowhere for any of that to go.
Right.
Right. So that was the only thing that is the concern, but generally speaking, you have about a minute in space to make it through. And as long as you hold your breath and you don't try and breathe in, blah, 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 you should generally be okay.
Cool.
So that's what I got there. I don't know. How do I start on this? Where do we go?
We were talking about shields on.
Oh, yeah. So what happens
non-Star
if somebody
Destroyers.
walks out?
Right.
So then are you imagining the shields basically being the same with a layer of oxygen holding as the Gungan shields? Is that?
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's totally what I was envisioning.
Yeah.
I think it's very similar, but one is gooey energy, and one is blue energy. I guess they're both blues. Fuck.
Like blue engineered science energy versus like, hey,
Yeah,
we found
it's
this
like
out in nature.
it's like fake goo
yeah.
energy as opposed to real goo energy. Yes.
Okay.
We will probably encounter the fake gooey stuff later on.
Oh, we definitely will. Oh yeah. Absolutely. So all right. Any other thoughts you have? That's one last thing. How did you feel about the character design of Trench?
I thought it was pretty awesome, except for his weird like floppy dildo thing that he was carrying around. Like, I didn't understand that.
Yeah. Now does it bother you that he's so obviously a real world tarantula that is just put into this universe and is like, hey, he's not a spider, but he's a Star Wars creature that don't worry that he's exactly a spider and we took no other.
I mean, I don't think so, because Thorians are just like hammerhead sharks that were like smashed onto somebody with a neck and a spine. So,
and maybe the same thing applies to that, because especially like I mean, in that first cantina scene, it's in A New Hope, it's really obvious that a lot of those are just off the shelf Halloween masks, and that's fine.
right, for sure.
You know, but now that we're in a zone where somebody has to draw it in CG and you can do whatever you want with the magic of animation, but we're just gonna have a giant spider that walks around.
Yeah, I prefer the giant walking spider guy to some other things that we will come across
Mm-hmm.
that are animalistic based. So we can get to that as we come
As
to
we keep
them.
going. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think
yeah.
that I got 3 other kind of main points questions for you.
Okay.
One, how many times is Obi-Wan going to be like, hey, Anakin, you need to do this? And Anakin's just like, nope, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want, before, like, anything changes. Because, like, in this episode, it's like, hey, you need to do this. And Anakin's like, nope, piss off. And then it's like, no, really, you need to do this. And he's like, nah, I'm going to go ahead and do what I want anyway. And they're like, oh, okay, well, here, have this experimental technology since you don't fucking listen to anybody and don't do what you're supposed to do, and you're all rogue and you do whatever the fuck you want. And then, like, it just, it seems irresponsible to the core to keep putting Anakin in situations where he's just going to fly off the rails, and things work out for him in the end. Yeah. But
there's still a chain command that he should be following.
Right. Somewhere along the line.
I don't disagree with you that even outside of the Clone Wars, diving into it and us getting 6 seasons, 5.5, whatever you want to call it, worth of content.
Right.
That was something that always bothered me.
Right.
That they kept this dude in charge for as long as they did.
And it's not just him. Like, this is a reoccurring problem in the structure of this entire conflict.
Like, if anything, it helps explain why episode 3 kind of conveniently happens the way it does to some degree.
Right.
You know, because we haven't met her yet in this episode, but then with Ahsoka, too, because she's essentially a kid.
I don't know who that is, man. This is the only episode I've seen.
Moving forward.
Episode by episode. Never seen anything, despite what I said earlier in this episode.
I'm just saying, they put... again, it's that weird issue of, like, you're a Jedi, you're a general. We don't care what experience you have, you're going straight to the top. And, like, all these clones that have been trained for it are like, what the fuck? Like, I've been doing this for, like, the 6 weeks I've been alive.
You know, it makes you think that it's possible that a clone would just, like, be like, fuck it, and be pissed, and decide not to fucking go along with everything.
Yeah. Because,
you know, I kind of wonder if that happens.
And again, as I keep looking forward, because, like, on occasion, you do have the clones that are like, this is exactly what we're built for, you know? Mm-hmm. So it is a curious thought. Because, nobody mentions it in this one, right? Because I feel like that, based on my first viewing years ago, it's like the catchphrase of Clone Wars. It's like, oh, this is what we're meant to do, you know?
Yeah, and that's... that is definitely not an overt message in this particular episode.
No, yeah.
This one is kind of Anakin pants, you know, like...
acting a fool.
Yeah.
Just being a dick.
You get Yularen, the human C-3PO, running around like shit's hitting the fan, everybody's gonna die every second. You got Anakin that's like, no, I want to do it my way. And that's kind of the gist that I get out of this.
Yeah, we'll have to this is definitely another open loop. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the idea that they would put somebody like Anakin continually in charge, because at some, like, again, going back, even at some point he got a scar on his eye, so he fucked up somewhere. Like, right? Like,
well, maybe he pissed off Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan just like backhanded him.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be awesome. I have one more random question concerning this episode, and then the only thing else that I've got is just I'm gonna call it technical. I don't know, the info as far as writer, director, and so on. But the question is, if these torpedoes are locked onto this ship's magnetic signature, why do they hit Trent's ship? So, to kind of explain the basis of my question, Anakin figures out how Trench is tracking these invisible ships, or these cloaked ships, right? Mm-hmm. And what Trench is doing is locking onto the quote-unquote magnetic signature of these ships and firing fucking torpedoes at it. So then
Yeah.
Anakin's like, oh, I totally get it, and just does like a Top Gun buzz the fucking tower flyby.
Yeah.
And at that point, the torpedoes are like, oh, I don't know, I'm confused. I'll just hit the bigger thing. Like, what? Is it locked on?
No. So
isn't it?
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I knew that was coming. What I'm imagining is that let's just say Anakin was continually flying in a circle.
Okay.
There are two ways for a missile to track. Now, is that missile in the middle just continually rotating, pointing at Anakin? Because that would kind of be like the shortest path to it, but Anakin continually just rotates away from it, right? Does that make sense? Or is it trailing Anakin in orbit?
It's totally just trailing him, because Anakin's like pointed one direction and then turns around, and the missiles are like, okay, we're gonna make a
So they make the
McDonald's
same
golden arch
correction.
here,
Yeah.
and turn around, and presumably the Invincible is stationary or in orbit or some facsimile of being in the same location.
Yeah.
And Anakin like flies up and then over the cockpit, and boom.
Yeah. So Anakin flies towards it, flies up, and then the thing doesn't catch in time. Is that maybe what's happening?
Maybe.
To answer your question, yeah. Because like those are the possibilities I was getting at. Like, so if Anakin just doesn't arch over it,
Right.
does it just see that Anakin's right behind the ship, but doesn't see that there's a ship in front of it, so it just keeps going to that straight path? Does that make sense?
It makes as much sense as turn
just
the thing
hitting it.
off, we got a fire.
Yeah. So there we go. That's my explanation for it. So
Yeah.
I got that's all I got for you there. No, these are the mysteries of writing. Once you get into writing something
Uh-huh.
and somebody needs to be in point B, you're just gonna get that person from point A to point B, like including missiles that need to blow up a ship. So
Well, I'm sure that when Kyle Dunleavy directed this, Brian Larson wrote this. I'm sure when Brian Larson was sitting down, jotting down some notes for this episode, writing up the thing, he was like, I need to come up with a 100% completely plausible idea of why these missiles are not going to do what a couple of fucking nerds think that they should do.
yeah, which is always the fun of writing a Star Wars movie, I'm sure.
I think that Rian Johnson has probably felt that wrath recently.
Oh yeah, that's why I wanted to get the science of what happens when you're floating out in space out of the way. So
Yeah.
That's totally plausible. So of all things in the Star Wars universe, that's the scientifically sound one. So anything else?
Yeah, is there anything you wanted to cover as far as cast and crew goes?
No, I got I think I covered all my notes in terms of just the weird observations I make / asking you again how you feel about the weird character design on Trench just being
I
a
like
simple
Trench.
tarantula.
I think
Just a
Trench and I
simple
would
tarantula.
be drinking buddies.
I mean, he seemed chill, but just as a character design, it's just like, hey, we can't make him human, so here's a fucking spider.
We can't make him human, so we'll just make like a humanoid figure with
like an
6 arms.
anthropomorphic, yeah,
and some hairy mandible
yeah,
things on his face.
and he'll have the
make him
exact
sound
same
like
speech
Pavel
vocal
Lesser
cords.
clicking, but he actually speaks English.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's what I got. So, okay. How about this? We've kind of picked it apart, but all in all, how did you like the episode?
Final thoughts.
Yeah.
30-second episode wrap up if you need to, and give it a thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah. Go.
30-second explanation. Go.
So, personally, I think it's because we started with this episode. It's really, really weird out of context, starting with this one being first.
Right.
And with that, like it's just barely, but I'm gonna go thumbs down on this episode. Just again, I mean, over the last like hour we've been talking.
Right.
You know, my annoyances, and they aren't big annoyances, right? Like I didn't hate this episode or anything.
Right.
It's just my annoyances outweigh the positives that I did enjoy about this episode. And,
right.
And they are big points. Again, just to summarize what we've just discussed, to me, the character design on Trench, the weird decisions of Anakin and everybody else to go along with it and not be annoyed with him in general.
Yeah.
And Yularen just being a fucking punk. Like, just being an annoying, like, crybaby when that's his entire breed is to be in war. Like, so it just, especially as a first episode, it's just weird. Like, you have this really shitty general with some really shitty, with one especially shitty trooper, and this enemy that's just kind of doing his thing, and like he by all means should outsmart them, but Anakin, because he just has the ability to fly, you know, and try spinning, that's a good trick, you know, like
yeah.
So yeah. Go ahead.
I give this a solid thumbs down.
Yeah.
And if for nothing else other than just kind of a lack of logic from start to finish, where it's really a stretch to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
There's a point in command, there's a point in being in charge where you just say, you ain't cutting it, you had your chance,
Yeah.
go sit on the bench, go fucking back to home base, whatever it is. And there were a lot of those. Well, I guess I can't say there were a lot of those in this episode, but there's
enough.
This episode was asking me more times to just stretch your belief a little bit or forget about this thing, so that we can kind of get to the point, which is dropping some boxes off to Bail Organa. And I really think it was,
which in
as
all of
far
us I forgot is the thing. Like,
as far as where this episode went, it really was, I won't say it was pointless, because there was a lot of people that worked long and hard on this, I'm sure, but in the overall arc of this story, it is a section of storytelling that didn't need to be told.
yeah.
And I think it is solely for the sake of introducing and really this is the introduction and the death of this cloaked ship, which for all of my recollection you never see again.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, I agree with all your points. The one positive I definitely have to say is, again, the Hunt for Red October submarine scene definitely was very well done. I think that was a really good attempt at them to kind of just let tension rise, especially in what could easily be brushed off as a children's show.
Right, and I wouldn't be surprised if the entire episode was built around that small idea. And if that's the case, that little bit is worth it. That's great. It's a great little segment, but it wasn't enough of an idea to stretch out to a 22-minute episode.
Yeah, which is sad, 'cause 22 minutes isn't that long. So it's, if we're struggling at 22 minutes, that's not good. But
yeah, if we had these Forces of Destiny,
yeah, like 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Yeah, they're like
great.
2 minutes at most. Yeah.
On fire would have been awesome.
Yeah. All right.
Sneak in, uncloak, shoot missile, cloak, get the fuck out.
Get on out. Yeah. So,
Be happy.
All right.
All right, Lorenzo.
all I
Well, why don't you tell these people where they can find you on the interwebs, on social media, and whatnot?
So we have an email that's notthenerdspodcast@gmail.com if you want to correct any of my science that I brought up. Surely we'll keep bringing up random science that can be very wrong at times, surely. We also have a Twitter @NotTheNerds, Instagram @NotTheNerds, which we still haven't done anything with, but we'll figure that out. But anyways, subscribe and like anywhere that you're listening to this. It's like going to be iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. Yeah, I'm basically throwing this everywhere. So Hopefully
It'll
you
be
like this
playing on
first
my
episode.
Walkman.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna get Kevin the cassette, so I will mail that to you soon. But yeah, so we'll put this up everywhere. This is, we kind of went long with this one. I think we were originally planning like 30-minute episodes, but we went for like an hour. This one. So
Yeah,
we'll see how that goes. We're still kind of figuring it out. Yeah.
I'm convinced that we're probably gonna whittle down
gonna-
to 45 minutes,
Something like that.
maybe something
Yeah.
consistent that we're shooting for. So yeah, give us some feedback. Let us know what's going on. Follow us on Twitter. Like Lorenzo said, you can reach us through Gmail, notthenerdspodcast@gmail.com. We do
and
have
Facebook,
a Facebook page
At the
Not the
Nerd-
Nerds
at Not the Nerd.
Podcast.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Okay.
those are those
Sounds
three
good.
things. Coming up next week is episode 2 for us, but it's season 1, episode 16 for the Clone Wars in general. So give us a week.
So we'll see you next week. Yeah.
Yep, we'll see you next week. Thanks,
All
Lorenzo.
right. Bye, everybody.